My name is Munir Nassar. I work for an inbound tour operator in Jordan. This was a family business. My father owned the company, and when I finished college, I just joined.
What was your first jobs in the company? What did you do at first?
I was learning for about 2 years, and until my father decided it was time for me I was mature enough to take on a couple of responsibilities.
Well, how different was tourism in Jordan back when you started to now?
It was very different. There were much fewer travel companies. At that time, tourism was mainly based on and around Palestine, the combination of people coming to the Holy Land and then coming over to visit Jordan, or they used to do the Levant tour, the entire Levant tour, doing Lebanon, Syria, and then coming overland to Jordan, and then crossing over at Menderbaum Gate at that time to go into Israel. Typically now, the bulk of the tourists we have are those who come to visit Jordan alone and as a standalone destination, rather than a combination. That is mainly due to the fact that the large majority of tourists we get are mainly Europeans. Now, the pattern of travel from Europe tends to be different from the pattern of people coming in from the Northern Hemisphere or even from Australia. Long distance, they would not come to one destination only. Europeans, because they tend to take more than one holiday a year, they would come and spend a week in Jordan, sometimes even longer, depending on their interest. Definitely much better these days. We've matured over the years as a destination, and we've managed to attract a good mix of tourist markets. We're not only into religious tourism, we're into cultural, we're into adventure, health and wellness, name it, conference tourism. So we have a little bit of everything. And in a small destination like Jordan you need to have a good mix of client base. If you're in the business since '63, it's going to be difficult for me to remember when I was there the first time. But I've been there very often. In the younger days, I used to escort quite a few of our clients. Don't do that anymore, it's too tiring.
Right.
I obviously attended quite a lot of the Jordan Festival, Jerash Festival events. That again, that was in the past. We worked in Jerash on filming. We've used Jerash as a film location. Part of the things that my company does is we provide production services for film producers and TV producers who come here. So we did a couple of documentaries for the BBC. Were filmed in Jerash. A TV commercial for Pepsi China, out of all places. We used the Southern Theatre, and we had 800 extras in the theatre.
What was the general idea of Jerash back in the '60s or 70s? This type of
It was and still is one of the main highlights of any visit to Jordan. Unfortunately, it's been overshadowed by the importance and the promotion we've put behind placing Petra as the site. So it is not, Jerash these days doesn't get the attention it should. Depending on the length of stay, we have a segment of the market that does, say, an extension from Israel. They wouldn't go to Jerash. But those who come into Jordan proper and have 4 or 5 days in Jordan or long, they all include Jerash into their itinerary. Yeah. It's, if you're, you tend to go for the easiest sell. So if I can bring people into Jordan so that they can visit Petra, then I'll do that, unfortunately. Having said that, you have a lot, again, depending on the interest of the tourist, there are people who really are interested in history or in archaeology or specifically in the Greco-Roman history. Then yes, absolutely. Then they would take in Jerash, they would take in Qais, etc. But as I said, Jerash owes more, we owe Jerash more in terms of promoting it. If I had the money, or if the government would do that, then I would say if they would build a small theater where they can recreate the history of Jerash. So visitors, besides seeing the actual site as it is, would enjoy 15, 20 minutes presentation on how Jerash was at the height of its importance within the cities of the Decapolis, within the Roman Empire or whatever. That would add a lot of value to the site. On a practical basis, the problem we have with Jerash, not we, but it doesn't cater to people with physical challenges. Obviously, it's very difficult to walk on Endicardo, or if you talk about the colonnaded streets or anywhere. And I don't know how that can be solved really, but that would be, again, another big plus. Again, the average age of the tourists that come through us mainly tend to be in the sort of late middle age to older generation. So obviously walking becomes sometimes of a challenge. But I'm basically talking about people who are strapped to a wheelchair, people where they can't just walk. It's not that they get tired, but they just simply can't walk. They're deprived of seeing not only Jerash, but Petra and everywhere. We're not really geared to that market.
Right.
But it's more of a, not that it's going to generate a lot of business for Jordan, but it's more of a service we owe people, if you want. Its proximity to Amman doesn't help make it into a more than a day's tour. Most of the tourists tend to spend half a day in Jerash, and then they either come back to Amman or they go up to Ajloun. But again, it's only about an hour's drive, less than an hour's drive from Amman. It caters mainly to Gulf nationals and people from the neighboring countries, if they want to come and watch one of these concerts that take place during the Jerash festival. We haven't seen it as a magnet that draws foreign, non-Arab tourists, visitors. I actually plan to do so at the beginning of next year. This year I spent it busy setting up the companies that it goes on without me. Tourism-wise, the one thing that worries me very much is taxing the infrastructure and the capabilities of Jordan with the increased demand that we've seen the last 2 years. I'd like the government and the industry as a whole to sit down and learn from Venice, learn from Amsterdam, learn from other cities that have started putting restriction on the number of visitors that come in. I know this is something that people don't like to hear because, again, tourism these days seems to be the only economic activity that's actually flourishing in Jordan. So people want to take advantage of it. But if we need to start thinking long-term, so that we can protect these sites for at least a couple hundred years to go, if we let it continue to grow as it has at the pace it has the last 2 years, it's not sustainable. I'll give you an idea. I know the statistics are very encouraging, but as far as we're concerned here in this company, we've seen an increase in the number of arrivals compared to last year of 62%. The services we have, the infrastructure is really taxed to the limit these days. In terms of qualified guides, in terms of transportation, in terms of simply the sites. One point earlier this year, during the first cruise ship season, I call it, March and April, there were several days in Petra where I had around 9,000 people in the site. Imagine just the body heat of these people in this crowded Sikh walking in, what that would do. And this is what worries me. This is what I'd love to see the industry tackle. Totally different. I remember the very first group I escorted to Petra. I was still a student. They flew in a Dakota from Beirut. There was a group for Swan Hellenic Cruises at that time. Company is extinct since then. We were all of 26 people. They flew to Ma'an. At that time, there was a landing strip in Ma'an. It was used by the British Army. It wasn't paved or anything. It was just a landing strip. And we had to take cars from Amman, drive them all the way to Ma'an, so they would pick up these visitors from Ma'an, drive them to Petra so they visit the site, and then drive them back to Amman so they could fly back to Beirut. Well, probably other than the 26 people that were in Petra at that day, it maybe have been another 20 or 30. So things have changed a lot. Things have changed a lot. Again, whatever I've said to apply, should apply to Petra, should apply to all the sites. I mean, yes, we'd like to see growth, but we'd like to, I learned this the hard way. I was in Florence several years ago and I wanted to go and visit the Uffizi Gallery. I should have known, should have done my homework. I didn't realize that you need to book. And that's when I said, why don't we do the same in Jordan? When we reach that critical mass, and start asking people to book or pay, book in advance. So at least you control the number of people that go into the site. If people think that that is bad for the industry, it might be, but on the other hand, anything that is restricted, anything that is prohibited, tends to attract more people than. So, and then it also may give us an opportunity to spread the business around, because we still suffer with the seasonality in Jordan. So if you can't come and visit Petra in April, maybe you'd consider coming in June, July, when we need the business then. So, I don't know, I'm not an expert on that, but I'm just worried about the future.